Tanium as a company is full of passionate people. And I think you're really going to enjoy this interview today with two of the lead developers on our Tanium localization process, translating the Tanium user experience into other languages around the world. And I tell you, as somebody who's been with this company for almost 5 years now, I think this is really one of the most heartfelt conversations I've ever had, just about how we really want to help everyone around the world in the fight for freedom. So I hope you enjoy this episode and these special interviews with Doug and Amanda. Tanium recognizes that cybersecurity threats around the world don't care what language you speak. And our mission is to equip people for that battle, regardless of where you live or what is your first language. And today you're going to see that in action. Welcome to Go-Tanium Tech Talks. I'm your host, Ashley McGlone. And today we have the developers of Tanium's localization project with us, and they're representing that team today. Amanda and Doug are with us. Doug, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ashley. My name's Doug. I am Tanium's globalization subject matter expert. I've been around the industry in globalization for quite a long time, going back to even my college days. I was a minor in Japanese, and that led to living abroad for years and years. I've seen every side of this thing, from developer to translator to rolling out products as a tech pre-sales person in these remote geos, non-English speaking ones. So it's just something I'm really passionate about.
Amanda, introduce yourself for our audience.
Sure. I'm a senior software engineer and the team lead for the localization project. And I've been with Tanium for 3 years, and I speak fluent French.
Fluent French. I don't speak fluent French. I took all the dead languages in high school and college, but that's impressive. I appreciate anybody that can do that. So as we were preparing for this show, Doug, you were giving me some of the backstory. There's some history here with Tanium and multiple language support. Give us a little bit of the background as we get to this new development.
Sure. So I've been with Tanium for almost 4 years. And obviously I've been, working and doing globalizing different things all that time. We've done the website, the corporate website is available in several languages, user guides, various training materials, marketing assets, stuff like that. There's been, a rich history of doing localization. And we, at one point, did localize the console previously, and that was like right before COVID hit. And then in response to COVID, there was some internal engineering initiatives that kind of caused us to pause localization for a bit while we could, refactor some things inside Tanium to deal more effectively with new environments dealing with COVID. And so that took a couple of years, and now we're back. And it's really exciting that we're 100% jumping in with both feet to the localization of the console and the rest of Tanium as we go.
That's good news. Now, Amanda, you said you speak fluent French, and I know the first thing, if I were watching this show as a non-English speaker, the first thing I would be wanting to know is what languages are we planning to support in the console?
English, French, German, Spanish, Japanese, and Korean for now. But that doesn't mean we won't add more languages in the future.
So how do you do that? So you're the lead developer on this project. So how do you translate languages? As I'm just guessing, there's so many little words. I know you call them strings, right? So many different strings that appear everywhere in the console. Where do you even begin?
From an implementation perspective, what we have to do is find all of the strings and wrap them with a function that causes it to translate into the language that the user prefers. And then in order to have those translations ready and have a high quality translation, in the prep for shipping that particular string of text, we have to bring it up on the screen, take a screenshot, and then send it off to the translators with a screenshot of the string in context for the highest quality translation. And then we have to have an automated system that that kind of herds developers down that path, pulls in the translations, ensures that the translations are there during our release process for every locale. And so there's automated build checks and processes involved in, and all that to do it at scale.
I think a lot of companies, US-based companies, we tend to de-emphasize the importance of, it's like monoglot people, if they don't happen to speak other languages, don't appreciate the importance, not only of just having the UI and the docs in their local language, their native speaking language for these customers, but also just the quality. I think that people imagine they're let's say we've oversold the machine translation technology in things like sci-fi movies and stuff, and they see robots speaking, English, like a human, and they imagine that it's all just press a button and it's word flipping and so on. And it takes a heck of a lot of work. It's a squishy process where there's a lot of, human specific interaction that's necessary to make quality translations. And so to enable that is something that really does, like Amanda was saying, it requires a lot of investment and commitment internally in the company from management, because the processes have to change, and people, in these waterfall design things where they toss it over the wall at the end, you can go back and say, well, the quality isn't very good, but people imagine it as a cosmetic type of thing, and it's just not. I mean, it's so critical to how we're viewed. You can imagine if you bought an English product and there were some misspelled words and kind of like awkward or bad sentences and stuff like that, it just reflects poorly on the product. So people in general, I think, don't appreciate from the other side what it's like in these markets, in these non-English speaking markets, to try and sell a product that's poorly translated.
So, Doug, I know you've been in contact with customers through this process, getting their feedback, guiding the design. What kind of feedback have we had from customers?
That's an interesting question. So I think up till now, we've done very well in the field, in remote geos, non-English speaking geos, because of the TAM model. The TAM model entails a lot of high touch support and in-person guidance with customers on site or remote or through Zoom or whatever. But as we move downstream into the emerging enterprise sector, small and medium businesses, we're going to be, customers are going to expect us to support them more out of the box with the user guides and especially the UI. It's the prevalence of English speaking technical people is really not that high, especially in some some countries. Depending on which country, it's scarce as hen's teeth to find very, very let's say fluent or highly functional English second language English speakers who are technical. So there are studies that show that customers who are using a second language to get through a very complex product like ours tend to kind of forge a path and stick right to that path. And they're a little bit nervous about getting off the path because they're not as strong, in understanding what the supporting documentation is telling them. So this is really going to enable more of our customers in these remote geos to become power users, and I think that will be a benefit to them as well as to us.
Amanda, I know one of the things that we enjoy about Tanium is working with passionate people. And as you and I were preparing for the show, you were very passionate about this point that Doug's making, and you had some interesting insight on that. Could you elaborate on what he said about the value and how this really equips our users?
Sure. So if you're looking at an example of one Tanium customer in a predominantly non-English speaking locale, hiring one Tanium operator to fill a role in their organization, and you add the extra requirement that not only do they have to find the person who's the right technical fit, but they also have to find a fluent English speaker, that shrinks their possible labor pool considerably. And even if you say, well, that's just a labor cost issue, right? The problem with that is that if you're only looking at that one company, sure, they could, increase the carrot and fill the seat. But if you expand outward and you consider the collection of companies, organizations, and institutions that make up a country, now you have a labor supply problem. And I think we've all gotten pretty familiar with what supply chain issues look like. When you have more seats than you do qualified people, it doesn't matter what money you throw at the problem, it just doesn't exist to fill the supply. So if our goal is to enable the free world to defend itself against cyber attack, then we have to give them tools that are available in their own languages and not only in English, because otherwise it's not possible to fill all the seats. So once you have a global goal and a moral obligation in these times to attempt to defend the free world, then that's the point where localization becomes not really like a cost or math problem, but it becomes very much a human problem and an existential requirement.
One of our co-founders has said repeatedly that our way of life is under attack, and that's not restricted to just English-speaking areas. All around the world, our way of life is under attack, and we want to empower everyone around the world with the right tools to help them fight that battle. So you articulated that so well. We view it at Tanium as a moral imperative. Doug, anything you want to elaborate on that?
No, I think Amanda hit it perfectly. I don't have much to add to that. I mean, I think it's very the current times and the stuff going on in the world right now, it behooves countries all over the world to put whatever local language in front of their administrators so that they can do the best job they can possibly do.
Well, there's a whole lot more I want to get into on this, but we've already about halfway through the show without seeing it yet. So Amanda, could you pull up a demo for us? We would love to see the Tanium console and some of these other languages.
So this is an example of a page that you might recognize in English. So it's a computer group page. So I'm able to view all of the computer groups here in a table, and then also add some filters for drilling down to a specific subset of computer groups. So if I come up to the user preferences section, and this, you might be familiar when we introduced dark mode, right? You could change the theme right here. So now we've added a new option here where you can change the language. So if I choose French as an example and I click save, then you can see that the page flipped over into the other language and the state of the page was preserved. So I was partway through filling out this form, and you can see that the form itself flipped over into French and left what I had already started. So this is a great tool to be able to toggle the language mid-workflow. So if you're not sure what something means as a user, or if you want to check what the English is for documentation or conversation with another Tanium user or your TAM, you can flip without losing state. Something else I'd like to point out down here is looking at the table on the right. This column here, it says expression. It's the question that underlies the computer group. So you'll see that still appears in English. So the question builder, because of the nature of what it does, is not being localized into the local language. So this is convenient for our customers because many of them have custom tooling, custom computer groups, and things around English language question builders. So for now, that is remaining in English. However, if you look at things like the headers and the overall UI, the filters, the buttons, the search, all of that is being localized. Another piece that we are continuing to preserve in its raw form is the return values, in some cases from the questions, depending on how the table has the data appear. Like in this example, true is kept the same because of how that piece of data is used in other expressions. Some of the Tanium terminology, like content set, also remains in English, and those decisions for what makes sense to completely localize into another language or what doesn't is being determined by Tanium personnel who work exclusively in those locales. So, in some cases, in a non-English speaking locale, you actually use the English term. So, that's why I mentioned earlier about using screenshots and deciding things on context. Part of that reason is that we want the vocabulary of the UI to accurately reflect the the vocabulary that's used by Tanium users and TAMs today.
Could you go ahead and show us the menus as well? They're under administration. And
yeah. So as an example,
there we go.
Yeah, as an example here, you can see, these are all localized. These 4 are not, and the reason is because they're modules that we haven't localized yet. So once they are available in the local language, then you'll see the names will also be localized to reflect that.
All right, now I'm really curious, and I know our audience is. So we've made the French people happy. Now I really would like us to go flip through every language just to see them once, right? Mm-hmm. And I believe you said that the Spanish was particularly Latin American Spanish?
Yes, it is. It's a Latin American generic Spanish to maximize the footprint of our audience. So you can see everything flipped over. Some columns made sense to flip. Some of them were preserved as was before. If I go to German. So even though, I don't know if you noticed, but even the notifications that are somewhat ephemeral, when you flip the language, we'll go ahead and flip into the locality that you're in. So see the menu has changed, everything's in German. Mm-hmm. I already did French. Yeah.
Beautiful. Looks like you've got some Romanji in there too, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Japanese and Korean. I may have misspoke. I don't think I saw any Romanji in there. No, that was my bad. That was my bad.
I mean, it's just standard Japanese kanji, hiragana, and katakana, but some words. So Romanji, it means just the Latin letters.
Right, right.
And some words remain in English at the request of the local TAM offices.
Yeah, and here's the Korean.
Something else I'd like to point out is that if you notice here, there's a date. So dates and numbers, numbers in the sense of, does it have a period or a comma or a space, as you're displaying a large number in a human readable format. All of that is being localized as well. So, in some locales, the month or the day, which comes first, is flipped, which can create a miscommunication. So we're localizing that as well.
I can only imagine this is quite a challenge to translate the console while, we're always releasing new features, new modules. And what we're looking at here is just the console. So what's the timeline look like for this? Is it everything right now? Where is it available?
So,
sure. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay. So basically the console is in the process of being released right now. And yeah, I don't want to try to associate a particular date, but it's like very close. It's working its way through QA and the normal release process. Interact is being worked on right now. It's in development. And then the idea is that it's going to be rolling delivery throughout the year into 2023 for the rest of the modules based on demand as much as possible. So we've solicited the input of the remote offices into what's the biggest demand, and we're trying to factor that into the decision as well. I think you pointed out one thing though, the continuous delivery, Ashley. That's something that so if I had to say that what things are exciting about this release, really two of them. We put a process in place that's very fine-grained and parallelized so that the translations are happening in real time as strings are created. And that's important because that's what allows us to remain in sync with the English and the non-English releases. So we're not, a lot of places you'll see an English release and follow up a couple of months later with a non-English release on a separate branch. And we're not doing that. And that's all kind of down to our process. And it's kind of a big deal. So it allows us to keep the quality very, very high because we can get the in context reviews done instead of kind of at the very end, rushing right before release or GA. We're able to kind of do those as we go, and then the translation also as you go, and so we're always in a state where the English and the non-English are basically in sync, going forward. Now, obviously, any of the modules that haven't been translated at all, there's a step where we have to do the translation, and then from then on, the maintenance will be in sync.
That's just amazing to me that, and I would think, not having done this before personally, I would just think that has to be a massive, complex process. But you're saying that we're going to be in real time as developers are creating UI experiences, that they're being translated throughout the development process so that we can go live when that thing ships. It will be shipping in all the languages. That just blows my mind. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a multilingual release. So we go from releasing English to releasing multilingual. So the requirement in order to do that is that we have to be able to ship new translations within 24 hours, because that's what our commitment is in some cases for shipping bug fixes. So if a bug fix can go out in this speed, then the translation has to be able to meet that same speed. So all of our tooling and everything is designed to promote that translation goes out at the same time as English. So wow. It's a justice issue, because when you put your English locale first and then the others sort of trail along, it means for companies that do that, it means that the trail along is always in a delay, which isn't really friendly to cybersecurity as an industry. So when you're releasing all of the locales at the same time and you're able to meet the same time commitment with multilingual as you were with English, it means that you're treating the rest of the world on the same footing as the English speaking customers.
Wow, that's impressive. So again, between Tanium Cloud and Tanium On-Prem, I'm guessing, will this ship in if I'm an on-prem customer, will I have to wait for a certain release to install to get that? Or if I'm in cloud, is it just going to show up automatically? What do we need to know about how to get it? Anything that admins need to know who are on-prem, things like that?
With cloud, it will make its way through the rings. With for TAS customers, for on-prem, it's the same as any other release. So whatever process that you as a customer have for receiving the next release, you'll find that there's a release that lists this as a feature, and then upgrading to that release gets you the feature. So it's no different than any other feature rollout in that sense.
So as we wrap up, we're about out of time here. I have got one other question, then I'll give you some chance for some final comments. But what would you say to the people who are just now getting the Tanium console in their own language as they start to use the console? What would be your advice to them, or what would you ask of them?
Speaking for myself, I would advise them to go back and take a look at everything that they've learned up till now in English, and see if they can expand their knowledge around that, and maybe recontextualize it, and maybe avail themselves of richer feature-rich Tanium scape that is out there. I think they need to kind of go back and maybe start from scratch and see what maybe they've been missing.
There's a little bit of give a mouse a cookie. Right, because we're making this announcement when we have the first of more than 24 modules localized. So what I would say is, if you like the console, there is a lot more to come, and we have a very large and fully 100% time dedicated team toward localizing the other modules. So it's going to roll out over the next year or so, and this is not a feature that's getting back burner. This is a feature that is being treated as a first-class citizen from here and forward. So if you have something that, in translation, you think, oh, that translation wasn't quite accurate or something like that, you can report that like any other bug, and it gets swept out and fixed like any other thing. So mostly what I would like to say is that this is an issue that I care about personally, but it's also an issue that the company really cares about. And we are committed not only to the UI for customers in these locales, we are also committed as a vendor to a long-term relationship with these locales, or we wouldn't make the investment, frankly.
Again, I work for Tanium. I'm impressed with our company, and it feels weird for me to brag about my own company right on these shows, but over and over I'm just so impressed. The commitment that Doug and Amanda, you've both shared here with our customers and prospects and our audience, just that this is not something that will somebody on the side, okay, developer's going to crank out the code, then over here somebody else has to go back and fix everything for the other language. It's not like that. That's an amazing statement that this really is a commitment. It's an investment from Tanium to make sure that it goes to these issues that you were describing earlier with staffing and security and helping the world to defend themselves in a way that's familiar and comfortable to them. Wow. Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, then any final comments, Doug?
Other than I'm just really excited to have arrived at this point, and I'm looking forward to getting a lot of feedback from the field in the successful use of this non-English version that we're releasing, not only the console, but as we roll stuff out over the next year.
Amanda, any final remarks from you?
A personal note, my husband is French and I follow what's happening in Europe every day. And it gives me great pleasure and great joy to directly contribute to localization. Localization at this time. I feel so privileged that as an American, safe and sound in my own bed, that I can do something practical on behalf of the free world right now.
Well, that's the heart of our company right there, folks. Thank you, Doug and Amanda, for sharing with us this localization effort to put Tanium's console and user experience in the languages of people who need it most. And if you're out there and you speak one of these languages that we have announced today, so obviously there's English there, right? But then French, German, Korean, Japanese, Latin American Spanish. We hope that this empowers you in your business and your fight out there, as Amanda said, in the free world. We are all in this battle against malicious actors in the IT world. So hopefully this empowers you in that. If you have any feedback for that, you can, as you get to see this console experience, you can surface that feedback through normal support channels, whether that's through email, your account team, or your team, whatever your support model is. Please give us feedback. Also, if you just want to make it short and quick, you can just email go@tanium.com. That's what we use for everything here on the show. If you have any feedback at all, we'd love to hear it. And look for this coming very soon to TAS and on-prem in those latest editions of the Tanium console. So thank you for joining us on what I told you up front. I told you this was going to be a fascinating conversation. Like you, I am really eager to watch this unfold across the console and the languages and the modules and everything. So again, give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, go Tanium.